I'm
The
Paul
Rush
Steiger.
Belleville Show.
I spent 30 years in law enforcement, beat cop to deputy sheriff, working 10 hours a day to protect and serve. Last year in Oregon, there were 13,000 citations and arrests for marijuana. Yes on 91 will allow law enforcement to focus on serious crimes, unsolved murders, rapes, missing kids. Measure 91 also mandates that Oregon develop standardized tests for driving under the influence, which we don't have now. That'll make our streets and highways safer. Yes on 91.
Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Poplar, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great.
Yes, not cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer-mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belleville.
All right, welcome tokers and tokettes and non-token lovers of liberty. It's 4:02 in the Pacific time zone, making our way to the end of the work week. 5 o'clock is on its way for you cubicle drones. Trust me, I know how you feel. Spent many a year working behind a desk, commuting every day, and staying as firmly entrenched in the closet as I possibly could. The cannabis closet. Not that there's anything wrong with the other closet, but the cannabis closet. And it's something that, I think our opponents don't get. They don't understand why this means so much to us. It's like, Josh Markey called me mean and crazy and called me a loon, and some of my other friends like Jennifer Alexander and some of us who are so single-minded and dogged in our pursuit of the truth and the end of this prohibition. And I really believe that our opponents just think of us as addicts. Well, they're addicts. Obviously, they're marijuana addicts, and their brains have been rewired to seek the pleasure of the drug to the point where they will use any justification, any sort of justification they can, any rationalization, any cherry-picking of data they can find to justify and accept their clinically addictive use of marijuana. I really believe that's what they think of us, right? We couldn't just possibly be people that are clear-minded and thoughtful about the issue and think that it's wrong because we smoke pot. So obviously, we're crazy drug-addled hopheads. So this is an aspect of legalization and the whole battle that I don't think our opponents understand, is that we don't feel like we are being denied the right to do marijuana so much as we feel discriminated against as a people. And I really don't think they get it. If they were to apply their talking points to any other discriminated or oppressed group, the bigotry of such statements would be so glaringly obvious they'd be embarrassed to make them. If they said what they say about potheads, if they said that about black people, or if they said that about gay people, or if they said that about Jews, or if they said that about women, it would be so outrageously bigoted that polite society would shun them, and they would have no credibility. But because what we do is an action, the taking of pot, the smoking of pot, however, since it's an action, since it's a choice, for some reason that makes the discrimination okay. The bigotry is fine. Despite the fact that we're not allowed, and it's very socially rude, to discriminate against people, and illegal to discriminate against people for their choice of which holy book to follow. That's completely a choice, folks. You decide to be Catholic or Jewish or Muslim or Mormon or Seventh-day Adventist or Hindu or Buddhist or whatever. And we're not allowed to discriminate against that. That's your choice. A choice about your state of mind and what you believe. We recognize that choice as something you can't discriminate against. But when it comes to our choice to use marijuana, well, we can't have that choice. Besides, we already gave you other choices. You already got alcohol and tobacco, and go see a doctor and get yourself a pill. You don't need that choice. Hell, Dr. Schwartzler in the debate, when he answered my question, and I kind of twisted it toward how I like marijuana more than alcohol, his answer to that was, well, that's your right. That's your right. And I believe he was referring to alcohol. Well, that's your right to use alcohol. That's fine. The most dangerous drug on the menu, go right ahead. But what it comes down to is they don't understand that we are a people. We are a people. And here's an easy way to tell. Ask someone if they're a smoker. Hey, man, are you a smoker? Oh, no, man, I don't smoke. I'm not a smoker. Oh, I used to smoke. I was a smoker, but now I'm a non-smoker. That's people classifying themselves and identifying themselves based on whether they choose to use nicotine or not. Ask someone if they're a drinker. Are you a drinker? Well, I'm a social drinker. Well, I used to drink. I used to be a drinker. I'm not a drinker anymore. People readily accept that label too. They understand that those are a people. When you ask someone if they're a drinker, and they say, well, yes, I'm a social, they'll usually say I'm a social drinker because they don't want to be confused with a lush, right? They'll qualify it, which is really just them saying they're a responsible alcohol user. Like we say we're responsible cannabis users. But if you get them to admit that indeed they're a drinker, look at them and say, but you're not drinking now. This is assuming you're not in a bar and they're drinking at the moment, right? Are you a drinker? And yeah. Well, you're not drinking now. So even they base their identity not on the fact that they are choosing to drink in the moment, but that they reserve the right to make that choice in the future. They define themselves as a type of people, a category of people, based on reserving the right to choose to use that substance. And that's the thing they don't understand, our opponents don't understand, is that it's not the marijuana so much as the, why the hell are you discriminating against us? Because clearly, people who identify as smokers and drinkers, otherwise known as people who reserve the right to take a harmful drug in the future, are not being discriminated against. Well, okay, to some extent. Smokers, you can make a case. You're getting some discrimination. But they're not criminalized, is my major point here. But we, tokers, are getting discriminated against. And we don't understand it because we look at the drinkers and we go, oh my God, look at the drunk driving and the wife beating and the puking in the streets and the getting in the fights and the sexy beer ads and the Coors Light ads and the naming of stadiums after it and the widespread availability of this thing that causes the wrecks and the damage and the cirrhosis and the death. And they're not getting discriminated against. And we look at the smokers and go, oh my God, the smoke in the air and their clothes and their hair smell like, oh my God, look at all the freaking cigarette butts everywhere. Look at all these cigarette butts and the lung cancer and the death and the addiction. And we make this available to 18-year-olds in a lot of states, in most states, I believe. And so we look at those two groups of people, the smokers and the drinkers, whose identity leads to so much damage in this society and to themselves. And then we look at ourselves and go, we seem pretty healthy. We're not hurting anyone. We're not the ones getting into a whole lot of wrecks and causing a whole lot of disease and damage. Why are you picking on us? And you know why they're picking on us? Because there's fewer of us. They'll say it. You talk to the prohibitionists, you hear their rhetoric, and they'll come out. You can take them to this place, and they will readily admit, well, we can't have alcohol prohibition. It's too late to do tobacco prohibition because those things have been accepted in our society. Oh, I see. So us not discriminating against them has been accepted for so long that there's so many of them that understand they have this right to choose to use a dangerous drug that it would be futile and counterproductive to try to stop them. But since this one's relatively newer and so many fewer people use it, we can oppress them. That's where that reasoning comes down to. So when we're here every day talking about marijuana and ending marijuana prohibition, I've heard people say, free the plant, free the plant. No, man, it's free the people. It's not free the weed, it's free the people. The fact that we use weed is ancillary to the whole discussion. It's that we are being discriminated against because we are a minority without a lot of power. Now that's changing. We're starting to make some money. We're starting to make breakthroughs. But the basis of this discrimination has just been because they can. Because there's few enough of us and enough of a majority that hates them that we just can. And it ain't right no matter how you dress it up. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back, more talk to wind up the day. I saw some good news in the chat room about the cancellation of Honey Boo Boo. I got better news to trumpet when we come back.
Five of the last 9 major party candidates to run for president, 3 of the last 9 vice presidential candidates, and the last 3 two-term presidents have all smoked pot. Marijuana, the gateway drug to the White House. This is the Russ Belville Show. .420 Radio is 24-hour marijuana.
I don't care for marijuana, but I do care about my family and their future. The system's not working now, so I think I'm voting yes on 91. Now, one small mistake getting caught with a little marijuana can ruin a life. A record, can't get loans, jobs, or credit, that's wrong. Measure 91 will regulate marijuana and generate tax revenue dedicated to police and schools, and let police protect us from serious crimes. Yes on 91 is a better approach.
Cannabis Cure TV with Greg DeHote from Sussex, England. Replaying Thursdays at 12 Pacific on.
In 2012, Washington State voted to regulate, tax, and legalize marijuana. I was for it. Well, the evidence keeps coming in. Our new approach is working. Month by month, tax dollars are going to schools and police, not the drug cartels. Wasteful arrests are way down, DUIs are down, drug prevention programs are getting funds. Strict regulations are working. Here, it's really better already. It's your vote, not mine, but it's working here.
The broadcasters of your area, in voluntary cooperation with federal, state, and local authorities, develop this system to keep you informed in the event of an emergency.
Welcome back, everybody. 14 after the hour. That's Zach Wild and the Black Label Society with Fire It Up. That's some of your Herb Thrasher Flower Hour type music. We'll be playing that at 8 p.m. Pacific time. If you want to catch what the last Herb Thrasher sounded like, just stay tuned. It's at the top of the next hour, 5 o'clock Pacific, last week's replay. And then 8 o'clock Pacific, we're back live with Herb Thrasher. He's got another major record label interview tonight, and I will see if I can find that email. Who we got tonight, Herb Thrasher? Let's see, Herb. There he is. Oh, yes. Lombardo. There we go. Lombardo. What's the guy's first name? I can't remember. But he's a 20-year member of Slayer. It's not my area of music, so I don't know, but apparently a huge deal tonight. A 20-year member of metal legend Slayer. will be on the show tonight, 8 p.m. Pacific time. Check that out. All right, so coming back, wanted to talk a little bit about some good news. Somebody in the chat room had remarked that he had great news today because Honey Boo Boo had been canceled. That reality show with the Southern, you know the show, Honey Boo Boo, has been canceled. I've got news that trumps that. This came 3 o'clock Eastern Time. A decision at the Michigan Court of Appeals ruled that workers that are fired solely for failing a drug test because they're medical marijuana patients do qualify for unemployment benefits. Yes, great news, Michigan Court of Appeals. This was said that that 3 state courts rightly reversed a decision by the Michigan Compensation Appellate Commission to deny 3 workers compensation after they were fired from their employers for testing positive for some levels of marijuana. The courts ruled basically the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act trumps any of that stuff. And so those people, even though they can be fired for their medical marijuana use, they still get their unemployment benefits. So that's really good news coming out of Michigan. The better news will be when we finally end this discrimination against people who use marijuana responsibly, and your status as a marijuana consumer can no longer be used against you to fire you. Now, in other news, we just played the commercial, the Yes on 91 commercial that features King County Sheriff John Urquhart and King 5 News? Yeah, King 5 News, the NBC affiliate up in Seattle, says that he makes a statement implying that legalization of marijuana has led to a decrease in DUIs in Washington. The total number of DUIs are down since pot was legalized in Washington in December of 2012, but the number of DUIs has been going down for years. According to the Washington State Patrol, the total number of DUIs went down from more than 42,000 in 2009 to 33,000 in 2013, a 25% drop. Since the ad implies DUIs are down because of the legalization of pot, we wanted to look into the number of marijuana-related DUIs. We learned that pot-related DUIs have gone up since December 2012 when weed became legal. In 2012, before the pot was legal, there were 988 marijuana-related DUIs. The year after pot was legal, the number jumped to 1,362. Now, I first saw that, I'm reading off of King 5, but then I also read the USA Today's recap of this. And USA Today said, people are talking about this. People are, criticizing the sheriff for misstating. No, it's just a news station trying to dig something up to make marijuana legalization look bad and purposefully leaving out some important information. First of all, that drop from 2009 to 2013 didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened as Washington State was having more and more and more open medical marijuana dispensaries. Okay? So you can't complain about the plethora of medical marijuana. Oh my God, there's so many dispensaries. There's more dispensaries than Starbucks. And then as that happens, DUIs drop by 25%. Maybe there's a connection there, guys. Maybe people switch from alcohol to marijuana, from prescription pills to marijuana, and they're far safer on the roads. The other thing, pointing out that in 2012, before pot was legal, there were less than 1,000 marijuana DUIs, and then afterwards the number jumped to over 1,300, is a little disingenuous if you don't mention that after pot was legalized, a brand new, completely unscientific 5 nanogram per milliliter DUID standard was introduced. That seems to make a little bit of difference, don't you think? It's just ridiculous. It's like the fatalities fall in Colorado. The driving fatalities are down to the lowest recorded ever levels. Oh, but the marijuana fatalities are up, so that's bad. The fatalities overall are down. If 2 drinkers switch to marijuana, 2 drinkers who would have died in a drunk driving accident switch to marijuana, and one of them dies in a marijuana accident, you still have a 50% reduction in the number of people dying from DUI. The fact that some portion of the alcohol DUIs may eventually become a much smaller portion of marijuana DUIs and thereby increase the marijuana DUI total, still, we have fewer DUIs. Isn't that the goal? To reduce DUIs. And it also doesn't even bring into the focus that the police are now looking for marijuana DUIs more because it's been legalized. So they've been trained to point it out more often and to find it and to catch people and to try to get that 5 nanogram thing.
Rabba-dabba-goo!
I don't have any goo. I got some flour. I'm actually smoking some flour today. Laying off the vapor pen for a little while. I'm going to save that. Boise State's playing 5 o'clock again. We are always playing on Friday. We're like a high school team, I guess. There's the Boise State game right after the show. I'll be departing for that. We'll have a good time. It's 4:20 here in the Pacific time zone. Light them if you got them. We'll be back with Herb Thrasher and a Rockin' Friday Toker tune.
420 Radio, the activist radio station.
The doctor has the right to prescribe OxyContin or any type of prescription like that. They should have the right to recommend medical cannabis for that same patient.
In the 1980s, my mother asked me to help a friend of hers who was terribly nauseous and vomiting every single day from her treatment, and my mother begged me, since I was a young adult, could I find marijuana for this woman? And it's a crime that even all these many years later, we still have to illegally get this treatment that really makes a difference for people.
The real concept is Amendment 2 would allow for medical decisions to be made by doctors instead of politicians.
We're asking you to please vote yes on Amendment 2 November 4th because there are patients that need medication in this state and they deserve it.
I am.
I am. And I am.
We're United for Care.
I'm Pete Tupmark. I spent 33 years in law enforcement, from deputy sheriff to sergeant, working 10 hours a day protecting Oregonians. Last year in Oregon, there were 13,000 citations and arrests for marijuana. That takes time. Time better spent solving murders, rape cases, finding missing children. The system is broken. Measure 91 regulates marijuana for adults, so police have time to fight serious, violent, and unsolved crimes. It's about time.
How desperate is the No on 91 campaign to scare you about marijuana?
A couple of things that he talks about is the advocates of this Measure 91 want you to believe that marijuana has medicinal value, which couldn't be anything further from the truth.
The truth is regulation is a better approach than prohibition. Vote yes on 91. This advertisement produced by the Russ Belville Show and is not sponsored or endorsed by the Yes on Measure 91 campaign.
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Rockin' Friday, featuring rock, metal, and the hard edge of alternative country. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tune.
All right, welcome back, everybody. 23 and a half after the hour, and it's Friday. It's time for some rock, and that means it's time for Herb Thrasher. How you doing, my man?
Oh man, we're doing great. I think Oregonians are just glad to have all their plants harvested, and I think we're glad to have the rains back, and I think we're real excited to have November 4th coming our way as we're going to legalize here in Oregon, as you guys have been hearing over and over again through our Measure 91 Voting Yes campaign, and just real excited to spread rock and weed here on 420radio.org. Got a great guest tonight on the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. There's a band, Film, and Dave Lombardo, formerly drummer of Slayer and Grip Inc. and Testament, and just many great bands and projects, is going to join us tonight and talk about their brand new album and things they've got going. And so real excited to talk to Dave Lombardo and just hear, everything about his future and where he's going and life after and things that are working in his world of music. So real excited for that and excited to share today's Rockin' Friday tune with you. This guy right here, Andy Frasco and the UN. Great band, kind of brand new, kind of making their name going on now. Has a brand new studio album just released, Half a Man. And he's kind of got his own label, So he's kind of working this whole music thing, and the label is Fun Machine Records. So you guys definitely get out there and check out and see what Fun Machine Records has going. But they just kicked off a 18-city tour and just started up at the Harvest Festival, the Yonder Mountain String Bands Festival there in Arkansas. And so they've got other dates going on, and they're fired up. They're playing their music on November 4th, the day that we're going to be celebrating legalization. They're going to be in Ohio. And so moving on from New York after that into Arkansas. So you guys can definitely check out Andy Frasco on the road right now. He's a 26-year-old dude from Los Angeles, man, and he's just singer-songwriter type dude. Entrepreneur, he's a party starter, everyday hustler, and his band of gypsies, the UN, they've kind of got this thing going, party blues with a touch of barefoot boogie. Played with many great bands, Gary Clark Jr., the Flowbots, Galactic, and Fishbone. And so Andy Frasco's definitely got it going on. This tune right here is on their brand new album, Half a Man. And this tune is Smoking Dope and Rock and Roll. And there is no freaking way you can go wrong with that. So you guys turn it up. Have a safe weekend. Join us tonight on Thrasher Flower Hour with Dave Lombardo of Film. And this is Andy Frasco. Smoking Dope and Rock and Roll.
Smoking dope and rock and roll, the only life I ever know. Not one for doing what I'm told. Smoking dope and rock and roll. I've been walking down a thin line. What's a shame and what's a sin? Now I'm finally making up my mind. This ain't no trouble that I'm in. So baby, take me for who I am. Maybe you don't understand. Just because I take the time to unwind, don't make me half a man. Smoking dope and rock and roll, only life I ever known. Acting bowls and rocking shows, smoking dope and rock and roll. Ain't no better way to go to hell. Didn't know nothing before I fell. If this is evil, then cast a spell. If this ain't happiness, then I can't tell. Smoking dope and rock and roll, rocking bowls and packing shows. Ain't known for doing what I'm told. Smoking dope and rock and roll. I wouldn't wish this on my firstborn child, but if he's just like daddy, it will make me smile. And should he find himself a guitar in his hand, I hope my boy would join the band. Smoking dope and rock and roll, paying dues by doing don'ts. Smoking dope and rock and roll, these two things will never get old. Smoking dope and rock and roll, mom and dad don't need to know. I guess now my cup is blown. Smoking dope and rock and roll, just sounds better when I'm stoned. Smoking dope and rock and roll.
Fuck yeah, that really means a lot. Thank you, Denver, Colorado.
420 Radio, the home.
Mike Schwab is a former middle school science and math teacher. Currently, he works with children daily as an after-school program leader.
Currently, kids have easy access to marijuana with little understanding of its impact. We can take better care of our kids through Measure 91 with strict regulations and funding for proven marijuana education and prevention programs to keep kids from using it. Under our current marijuana laws, one mistake can ruin a life. Measure 91 removes unfairly harsh punishment for marijuana offenses and gets more tax money to local police and drug prevention. Vote yes on 91.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com. Gordon Green's Music Planet, every Wednesday at 5 and 8 Pacific on 420radio.org.
You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com and follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher.
Welcome back, everyone. 31 after the hour. This song is a good reminder that if you've heard us talking about the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour and you hear all this metal music and all these doom kind of voices, this is also the kind of music you'll hear on the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour.
I could hear you singing, and I wish I couldn't sing.
It's music from Fruition. That's Mountain Annie, recorded live at the String Summit out here in Oregon. And Herb's a big supporter of bluegrass and alt country as well. My joke is that if they're playing guitars fast, Herb likes it. Doesn't matter if they're acoustic country or screaming, distorted, amplified metal, Herb digs it. So check it out, Herb Thrasher Flower Hour tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific time. All right, so coming back to our discussion here, I had another story I think that I had lined up here. Let me check it out. Okay, now I want to get back into this discussion about us as a people, marijuana consumers, as a identifiable culture. We have everything that you would expect, anthropologically speaking, that defines a culture. We have traditions and rituals and our own little language and all sorts of things that define a culture. Now, that's not to say that we're a homogenous culture. There are, suit and tie stoners, and there are tie-dye stoners. There's all range of stoners that there are. And by the way, I don't mean stoners in a derogatory way. Actually, I've got another theory about stoners versus potheads. A pothead is someone who knows all about pot, loves pot, can tell you everything you want to know about pot, versus a stoner is just someone who loves pot, right? Like Spicoli was a stoner from Fast Times, but Slater from Dazed and Confused was a pothead. That's just pop culture theory of mine. But we are, identifiable people with a certain belief and a certain action and certain sacraments and so forth. So this discrimination against us is what we are fighting, and fighting it in the most polite and civilly non-offensive way I think possible, trying to do it from within the system. We're not, we march, but we're not like breaking store windows and overturning cars and setting fires and, rioting or anything, right? We are working well within our constitutional rights. And I think that's a testament to us as being the side that actually does respect the Constitution. I have this red, white, and blue motif that I've been working with for years now. And a very, purposefully patriotic, almost to the point of Stephen Colbert satirish kind of red, white, and blue thing. But I do that on purpose because I really believe that our side is the more American side. I believe we are the patriots, and the DEA and the prohibitionists out there are those types of enemies I swore to defend the Constitution against, all the way back on my 17th birthday when I joined the National Guard. So I feel that, this is a very patriotic movement. That's why those little flag posters I made, they say it's our patriotic duty. I really believe that. Our country was founded by hemp farmers. Our citizens paid their first taxes in hemp. Hemp was a major reason why our country was able to survive wars and naval battles and such. It fed and sustained our pioneers as they came across to the state I'm in now on the Oregon Trail. And it's just this blip in history of it being prohibited. This really small 20th century blip of prohibition based on one aspect of the use of this plant. So, yeah, I think it's a total patriotic duty, and I see us as patriots. And I think as the history books are written of this era, we go down as freedom fighters. We go down as being on the right side of history. And those who opposed us in the DEA and the executive branch and throughout law enforcement from every level to the city, from the city cop all the way to the attorney general, will be seen in history through the same lens as those who supported slavery or those who supported, anti-miscegenation. I can never say that. Black and white people can't marry. I can never say that damn word. Miscegenation. I can never say it. Laws. People that supported, anti-sodomy statutes. People that wanted to keep, women from voting. I mean, they're the same ideological ilk. And history will prove us right on that. And as I went over Mark Kleiman's piece today, and in the past, as I've reviewed, Kevin Sabet's attempts at logic and Patrick Kennedy's appeals and so forth, as I've evaluated all of this, it really comes down to the base assumption that they start from. And when you examine someone's worldview, and I've done this for a while because I think it's fascinating. I read a lot of science fiction as a kid, so this idea, peering into different realities to me is kind of fun. And I've done this with religion. I've done this with Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, all sorts of types of thinking out there. Everybody's type of thinking can usually be boiled down to a few core assumptions about how the world works. And from that, every developed position can have a coherent logical structure. Not so much in the drug war, but, conservatism, liberalism, Christianity, Buddhism, whatever. Any mode of thinking. If you accept the initial premise and then build from that a logical structure, then, the logical structure can make complete sense, even if the initial premise is absolutely batty. I'm not going to say which of the conservative, liberal, Democrat, religion, whatever ones I think are batty. That's not the point. The point is, the people that support prohibition base their whole logical structure upon a few core principles. A few core assumptions about how the world works. And the one that I've been focusing on the most lately is this idea among them that accepting marijuana use and making it legal will lead to greater use among adults and especially children, and that will lead to disaster. The implicit assumption that more use of marijuana is by definition a bad thing, and its converse, the elimination of marijuana use, is something we should strive for. That right there is the underlying assumption girding the entire prohibitionist mindset. If we let them use it, they will. That's really what it boils down to. If we let them use it, they will. And you can divorce this from all the theory of, the economic competition to the pharmaceutical industry or the replacement of the oil industry and all of the rationale and reasoning and justification that they stack on, even that we may stack on to this entire assumption. But at its core is, oh my God, we got to keep this shit illegal or people will use it. And that's where I think now that we have the majority, this is where our knockout punches start to come from, is we start to attack this implicit assumption that more people using marijuana would be a bad thing. If I get the opportunity, and I think it'll happen someday, I would love to be able to confront Kevin Sabet or any of these prohibitionists and just point out that I'm the guy they're warning everyone about. I am that addict they're warning everyone about. I'm the guy who could be fairly characterized as a marijuana addict. Now, you've heard my previous rants on what I think about addiction and how my dad had alcoholism and tried to kick smoking. And you know what I really think about addiction. So understand when I say addict here, I'm putting the little sarcasm quotes around it, and I'm thinking of things devil's advocate style from their point of view. I don't think I'm anything close to an addict. That said, I'm the marijuana addict you're talking about. They always say, well, 1 out of 11 adults who tries marijuana will become addicted to it, will become dependent upon it. And that risk goes up to 1 in 6 if they try it in their teenage years. Now, I didn't try it in my teenage years. I didn't try marijuana until I was 22. But when I did try marijuana, I haven't stopped using it since. And as time has gone on, I've used more of it more often. As I've gotten greater access, as the prices have gone down, as I've moved to a state where it's more legally permissible, my use has increased. As they predict will happen in a general case. So let's just give that. I'm your marijuana addict. I'm the 9%. I'm the guy who's using it not just daily, but hourly. I'm the guy who, if I have to go without marijuana, I can, but I really don't like to. First day that I go out without marijuana, I'm kind of a little nauseous all day, and it's tough for me to get to sleep that night, and I'm a little bit of a bastard. I'm a little grumpy. Yeah, you don't want to be around me the first couple of days I don't have weed. Now, day 2 or 3, it's really any noticeable problem. But for that one day, yeah, I'm a bitch to be around. So here I am. I'm your worst case nightmare scenario in the flesh. I'm that guy. I'm your marijuana addict. So you got to convince me that somehow the world would be a much more dangerous and deadly place if there were more people like me. And it ain't happening. You're not convincing me. As I said in that question of the debate, man, I don't have any kids. I'm not affecting the kids. I'm self-employed in my own home, not affecting anybody's workplace. I don't own a car. I take public transportation everywhere I go. I'm not only not affecting the drivers, I'm actually making the roads safer and helping to contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gases in this planet. So where's the harm I'm causing? You can't show it to me. I'll even concede. I'll even give them this. Because of my marijuana use, I may not be living up to my potential. Indeed, I may have lost IQ points. Oh dear. Now, I don't believe that bullshit either. In fact, the most recent study out of the University of London shows that it's complete bullshit. But still, I'm playing devil's advocate, so work with me. Let's say it's true. Let's say you're right. Let's say you lose IQ points if you use marijuana all the time. Oh dear. Let's say that I'm not as quick or smart as I could be if I didn't smoke weed all the time. Let's say that rather than my current, working 10 to 12 hours a day, I'd somehow be more productive or more motivated if I wasn't smoking weed all the time. Is that enough reason to force me not to do it? Now, this is an argument you might be able to make for PCP. Right? Well, I just like to do some PCP every now and then and go on a wild face-eating binge and beat up 6 cops at a time, right? Maybe there's an argument there. And I'm talking out my ass because I don't know how PCP works, right? So why would I know? Maybe you can make that argument for cocaine. That's a pretty highly addictive drug, and, people do kind of get a little whack on it and cause some harm to society. Might be able to definitely make that argument for alcohol. But I don't see how you can make that argument for marijuana. Yeah, let's say that heavy marijuana use by some people causes them to become less motivated or less productive. Where is it written that we must force people to be as productive and live up to as much potential as they possibly can? That's not the job of the criminal justice system. That's the job of your family, your school, social mores, cultural norms. That's not something you enforce under the law. Why can they not see this? Maybe because they don't want to.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel?
The Russ Belville Show reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while. Share.
420 Radio, fighting prohibition since 2012.
Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out lushledlighting.com right now.
The pistachio. Green, natural, and available without prescription in all 50 states. He's fine.
Oh, yeah, man. 46 after the hour, that's the unmistakable Robin Trower with Bridge of Sighs, live from 1974, which, as Homer Simpson correctly observed, was the peak of rock and roll. Everyone knows rock and roll peaked in 1974, Marge. Think about that statement for a while, you realize he's right. All right, so welcome back, everybody. We are just closing out the week here at the Russ Belville Show, and we thank you so much for your continued support. We are so excited about the future here in Oregon because we will be well established in beautiful Potland, Oregon, and it truly will be Potland, Oregon, folks. We are going to have the world's best marijuana law, bar none. And it does have a lot of time before it officially goes into effect. First of all, when we pass it on November 4th, the legalization aspect will go into effect December 4th. And it'll be legal to possess and legal to home grow. And that'll be the case from December 2014 all the way through 2015. The Oregon Liquor Control Commission has an entire year plus, like a month, to develop the regulations that will govern the pot shops, the growers, the processors, and the wholesalers, and the licensing and all the things that have to happen there. So they got a full 13 months. Well, 12 months and 27 days. They got a lot of time to put together the regulations and to also monitor what's going on in Washington and Colorado and adjust as they go. It won't be until January 2016 that we start opening up any pot shops. So that's what we are so looking forward to here. And it's hard for me to believe that, we're just 11 days away. 11? Something like that. Yeah, I think that's right. We're just 11 days away. A week from next Tuesday that we'll be covering all this stuff. And it's not lost upon me how global this is. The ending of Prohibition has to start somewhere, and it started in Colorado and Washington. But if we didn't follow it up in 2014, legalization in Colorado and Washington would have been left on their own to develop in whatever direction they would have developed. So far, what we've seen from Colorado has been very, very promising. They finally have recreational selling more than medical. They just eclipsed that in their latest August numbers, I believe. So things are working out there, despite the fact that taxes are still too high. They're still overtaxing it. Washington State, on the other hand, has not looked as good. People still can't grow their own at home. There's been the issue with, too little supply, too few stores, way too high of prices. And this, this cloud hanging over medical marijuana, which, I've said many times is really medical marijuana's fault for not being regulated. And that's the fault of the legislature and the fault of the governor who vetoed things, and partially the fault of activists who weren't willing to compromise on certain things, like a freaking patient registry, for God's sake. But anyway, I digress. Regulating recreational is not to blame for unregulated medical. But despite where the blame might lie, it's still there. It's still a dark cloud. 330 pot shops, dispensaries, medical dispensaries in Seattle that are unregulated and unlicensed got letters this week from the city saying, hey, you got to shut down by mid-2015 or you're in trouble. You can get busted. You need to get a license. And of course, these medical shops are like, there is no license. There is no medical license. We can't get one. There's no such thing. Of course, they could apply to be I-502 stores, but they don't want to do that. They want to still be medical. They still don't want to have to be subject to those high taxes, and they don't want to have to charge their patients way too much for a gram of weed. And I understand that. That's very noble. But the letters do also specify they've got until the beginning of January 2016 if the legislature gets involved. And folks, I really believe that when Oregon passes our legalization, the pressure on Washington will be immense to not only bring down the taxation in I-502, but to get a handle on medical marijuana in a responsible way. The pressure will just be immense. Number one, we found just recently from Washington State's latest numbers that the two pot shops in Vancouver, Washington, just 9 miles away from me, are the two highest grossing pot shops in Washington State. That's right. Not Seattle, where millions of people live and lots of tourists flock to. Not Seattle, but Vancouver, Washington. Now, no diss on the Couve, but it's not exactly a tourist hotspot, okay? Right? No disrespect, but, But Vancouver, Washington has the two highest grossing pot shops in the state. And then like the highest grossing county is Spokane County, right across the border from Idaho, right? So already they're feeling the pressure of like, okay, we're getting all this extra money coming in from out of state. We're making all this tax revenue. A lot of it's coming from people out of state. And when Oregon passes, they realize that they'll hear Ross Perot's giant sucking sound of Oregon tax dollars returning to Oregon. They will lose out of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they'd be getting from Vancouver, Washington, because that money will stay in Oregon and pay much lower prices for weed. And the customers in Vancouver will start crossing the river into Portland, where the prices will be far, far lower. So the pressure will be immense on that respect, on the recreational side for Washington State. They'll see all these tax revenues dropping. And then on the medical side, as Oregon's law gets implemented, we are going to see a reduction in the patient rolls on our medical marijuana program. If you can grow 4 plants at home and store 8 ounces and have a pound of edibles and have a 6-pack of tincture and have an ounce of concentrate, and you got pot shops where you can buy an ounce that'll cost between $140 and $200, why are you going to spend $100 to the state to get your medical marijuana card? So that you can grow 24 plants and have 24 ounces? Now, for some people, yes. Yes, for some people that are really sick and disabled, absolutely they will. But for the people that, I got some pain, I got some nausea, but, it's not an everyday gotta have an ounce thing, they'll be fine under our generous medical or generous recreational limits. They'll be fine at that level. They'll be happy to shop at all the pot shops. So the medical in Oregon is going to decrease. There will be fewer dispensaries and more pot shops. And the dispensaries will cater specifically to medical patients offering more high CBD varieties, offering more different medical, real medical delivery, Rick Simpson oil, that kind of stuff. And the people who are the patients will be much more on that end of the severely disabled. The really, even our prohibitionist opponents would go, well, yeah, that person should have medical marijuana. So medical marijuana will get this huge facelift in Oregon because the rolls will go down. People will perceive that as, aha, all the potheads got off the medical marijuana program and now it's just for patients. That'll make medical marijuana look better. The dispensaries that remain in Oregon will have much better selection of medical varieties that the patients will want. And the patients from Washington will, and remember, Oregon has no residency requirement on its medical marijuana program. So the severely disabled patients in Washington state, why, they just can come to Oregon and get their card. Shop at our dispensaries here, at least the ones in Vancouver, Southern, Centralia, and Southern-wise. The ones in Seattle, the ones in Eastern Washington are going to start really complaining when they see, hey, look at this medical program that's working so well alongside recreational in Oregon. And you guys have mucked it up here in Washington state. There'll be such high demand for action at the legislative level that they'll no longer be able to ignore this in Olympia, and they'll finally be able to get some regulations passed for medical marijuana in Washington that saves its program, that continues to bring to patients the low taxation and the amount of selection they need. And they'll have to start adjusting the taxes on the recreational side. They won't be able to hang with 25, 25, 25 anymore, an effective 44% tax rate in Washington state, because they won't be able to compete with Oregon. They want tax money. They want to have something come in. But if the taxes are so high, you remember your Econ 101 chart where those lines cross, you got to find that demand and supply sweet spot. And that sweet spot's going to be much lower when Oregon's only taxing it at $1.25 a gram. You ain't going to be able to sell a $35 gram in Washington state. That's the beauty of what's happening here, and understanding that what we do here in Oregon and what we do in Alaska and Washington, D.C. and Florida and Guam and everywhere isn't an isolated event that just affects our state or city or county. It affects the whole world. The whole world, literally. Assistant Secretary of the State Department just had to do a major, call on the carpet, mea culpa moment to the UN because the U.S. is in complete disregard of international drug treaties because of Washington and Colorado moving forward with legalization. And he had to say, well, we can have some flexibility in these treaties, couldn't we? We didn't used to have flexibility when we were cracking down on Colombia and their cocaine and spraying their fields with pesticides, or we didn't have that much with paraquat in Mexico. We didn't have that problem with, subverting the sovereignty of other countries in Europe and South America when we want to enforce our global prohibition based on those drug treaties from the UN. We weren't so flexible then. Oh, but gosh, now that we're the ones in danger of having trade sanctions placed upon us for violating these UN treaties, my goodness, we need a little flexibility. It's global, folks. Everything we do has a global ripple effect. Passing decrim in your town has a ripple effect that will affect death penalties in Singapore for trafficking weed. Not immediately, but it will. This is a global fight, and we're acting locally, and we're making great and huge changes. And within 20 years, looking back on this period of U.S. history will be like looking back at other periods of U.S. atrocities and wondering, how in the hell was that ever even possible? What kind of society were we that we even thought slavery was something that was cool? How in the world did we ever exist thinking that women shouldn't vote? How is it that we had a society where we criminalized people for being gay? How in the world did we ever throw people in prison for life for a plant? That's all the time we got. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for a replay, Herb Thrasher Flower Hour from last week, his interview with Todd Severin from Ripple Music. It's a good one. Stay tuned for that. And then 8 o'clock, we're live. Again, we've got Dave at the last name from Slayer, from Flag. Oh my God, I'm so bad. It's Friday. Till next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it,